You've already been working on paper number one in as much as you've drafted a literary device-based paragraph in response to Connecticut Yankee, and you've drafted a theory-based paragraph about the same passage as the literary device-based paragraph. So in a way, you've already got a chunk of the paper drafted. So it's a good time now to stop and formally take a look at the larger project, how it's set up, how it's going to work, and where we're going to go from here. So one of the things I want you to understand is the core requirements of the assignment. It's going to be a 2,000 word minimum assignment. Most papers go significantly beyond that, 2,200, 2,400 words, especially the papers that do well because they go into a greater level of depth in their analysis. Secondly, the paper is going to be in MLA format, so it's going to be important to master the rules of MLA format. Many of you have already done that in a lower level comp course, English 100 if you took it here at Maricosta, some other course label like 1A if you took it somewhere else. But we're going to really be making sure you master these approaches, and we're going to rigorously apply the rules. You're going to have an intro with a thesis that comes at the end of that intro. It'll be the last sentence of that intro. You're going to have 7 body paragraphs. We'll talk about how those are going to evolve, and at the end you're going to have a conclusion and a works cited. So it's going to be a paper of significant length. It should be a length you've dealt with before at some point in the second half of your 100 course, but moving the criteria for rigor and detail forward from where we were in English 100. So let's take a look at the structure of the paper. Basically, you're going to look at 3 different passages from Connecticut Yankee, one from early in the novel, one from the middle, and one from near the end. And they're going to be passages that you have identified in the passage journals that you've been doing all class so far. Woohoo! Yes, you weren't wasting your time. There was method to the madness. There was a purpose beyond getting you to read closely, and that purpose was to collect a set of passages that you could choose the best from as the foundation for your paper. After you have looked at 3 different passages, you're going to have one last body paragraph that looks at one of the Dan Beard images from the book. So if you're working from a hard copy that you found, you're going to need to go back to the online copy to look at those images because most of the hard copies of the novel don't include those images. So that's going to be the structure. You're basically looking at 7 paragraphs, 2 paragraphs for each of the 3 passages, and then a final one about an image from the novel, final body paragraph. So you'll notice that for each passage you choose, you'll be writing 2 paragraphs, and you've already done this for one passage. You write a passage where you take a literary device-based approach, a paragraph where you take a literary device-based approach, and you write a second paragraph about that same passage from a theory lens. So that's the exercise, right? Passage 1, literary device, theory. Passage 2, literary device, theory. Passage 3, literary device, theory. Final wrapping up the body of the paper with an analysis of an image from the novel. So that's the structure, and as you can see, we're already moving along. You've already kind of drafted passage 1, and for this current deadline, we're going to be looking at passage 2, and for our next deadline, you'll draft your work on passage 3 and the image. So that's kind of where we'll go, how we'll go through the drafting process. After that, we'll have time for a revision and other things that I'm going to talk about in coming slides. So the approach to this is an inductive method. What does that mean? Well, what it means is we're actually going to draft all our body paragraphs about the different passages we want to look at independently, not worrying about having some overarching thesis, just for each passage looking at what's going on here, because it's very possible, maybe even likely, that passage 1 is going to say something different about your theme and human agency than passage 2 and or passage 3 will be. And if we start off with a thesis trying to argue that Mark Twain throughout the novel is trying to say one thing about human agency and your cultural theme, you're going to be putting yourself in a box. And also, you're probably not going to be fully understanding Twain, who is rarely that consistent and is more likely to mix ideas and perspective about human agency on your theme throughout the text. So the inductive method is in many ways for us a requirement given the complexity of the text. If we try to limit Twain and ourselves to one position and make all the passages fit that, the paper won't work. Instead, we're going to draft out all our analysis and passages and then construct an umbrella thesis that works to describe what we've actually done in our paper. Once we have all our body paragraphs, then we're going to write our thesis and add an intro and a conclusion. And the intro is going to be a paragraph that comes in front of the thesis, which will be the last sentence of it, and the conclusion will come at the end of the paper. And as we get to the thesis, intro, and conclusion, I'll be giving you detailed lectures and examples that will guide you through that. But the important part now is to trust the process and follow the writing activities that are going to walk us step by step through the paper. So rather than trying to start with an intro and have a thesis, we're actually starting with our body paragraphs, and from what we write, then generating a thesis, intro, conclusion, which should leave us with a very strong paper number 1 at the end. Remember, you can always rewrite paper number 1. In fact, you're going to be required to rewrite paper number 1 as part of your final exam in the course. So this is not something that you should be worried about in terms of perfection the first time through or getting the perfect grade. You want to do the best you can using the examples and the feedback you will be getting from me during week 4 and your classmates during week 4 and 5 to help you improve your work, understanding that there's a long-term process here which allows you to rewrite for the final exam. Remember, your final exam rewrite, if it's better than your grade for the original paper number 1, will replace your paper 1 grade as well as count for your final exam. So there's lots of room for growth and improvement in this class. Okay, see you in Canvas. See you as you continue the paper 1 drafting process.